We're all set. Okay, we're calling this meeting to order at 6:26 p.m. And we're going to start with new business. A recovery plan presentation. So that's Mary Ellen, and
we got quite a few.
Yeah,
I'll open it up.
Okay.
If we can just start putting the presentation, can we stream the presentation, please? So while Kristen's putting that up, I'm going to talk to my board members. I hope people over there can hear as well. This was definitely a team effort. We began recovery months ago, right? Talking to different stakeholder groups across families, students, many of our community providers in town, teachers, administrators, etc. What you see here is the core group of the core team, but there was many hands in the pot. I will say these are all central office administrators we're a small team, a mighty team. And between all of us, we put together what we think is a comprehensive plan to be submitted to the State Department of Education for approval. So tonight is not really approval from the board, it's information similar to our T-Val. When we present our T-Val each year, we present it to you for information, but the approval comes from the State Department of Education. So we will be submitting it to the State Department of Education, March 23rd, 4th, 5th, I can't remember the date.
That's tomorrow.
No.
March 30th.
By March 30th, it needs to be in. But we wanted you to have your eyes on it first and also to give feedback. You have sticky notes. It's quite a long presentation, I will say. And so if you have questions or comments, please jot them down. Sandra, do we want them to put them somewhere up front, back, or we'll just go around and collect?
Yes, because we may answer them along the way, so
Right.
for a little bit and then we'll grab them.
So we're asking that we hold our questions because we really want you to see the presentation in its entirety and not just a portion of it. Always welcome for feedback and questions, and we will be very timely in our responses to you, if not tonight, very soon after when the committee comes back together to look at it. So I just have to acknowledge not only the team, I have an amazing cabinet who works very hard, but I want to call out also to CMHA, Community Health Center, the YMCA, all of our community providers, our BCBA providers, our polled families and our students who spoke with community providers to determine what the needs are and what approach we should take. So there was many hands in the pot, and we really appreciate everybody's input. And I'm going to now turn it over to, well, we'll go to the next slide. I'm going to read this because this is relevant. Next slide, please. We can continue to pursue excellence one student at a time. Our vision in New Britain is to pursue excellence for every single student that walks in our doors. And with this recovery plan, we feel confident that we can continue to pursue that excellence for every student. And I am going to turn it over to Sandra now to give you an overview or a framework of the ESSER dollars, where the funding came from, and the priorities of the ESSER dollars.
Hello, everyone. I'll kind of talk loud and kind of pivot here and there. I first wanted to start talking about what ESSER is. ESSER 1 that we already received, and the ESSER 2. So if you notice in the packet, elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund is ESSER 1. Last year we received $5.1 million, and there were, from the federal government and the state, there were 12 different focus areas that we could identify to spend the dollars. What New Britain did is focus mainly on bridging the digital divide. We spent the majority of the $5.1 million towards resources for all of our students so that they can all have a device. And the focus areas listed up there is specifically for that. It's providing principals and school leaders with the resources necessary for the needs of the school. We spent on computer repair specialists, technology specialists to ensure that everyone all our youth could adapt. The second focus area, and we can go through that quickly, just so I can, for the timeliness of the 5. Focus area number 2 We spent our dollars on MiFi units and technology equipment. Focus area number 3, which is planning for and coordinating long-term closures, including how to provide technology. This is where we focused on like TotalCom, our Shaler partnership, AT&T, mobile units, multi-year online platforms, so software programs that our students needed to learn on, iReady, Seesaw, and all of those implementation programs we needed for an online learning environment. Services was number 4, including Comcast, so that even though they had to pay for the service fees after they got the internet. And then the last one, 5, is our engagement with our community partners, and the why, talking about our supervisor most learning sites, so that students had a place to go when their families are working during the hybrid environment. That wraps up kind of ESSER 1, where the majority of our dollars are. Yes.
This is also, I believe the board appropriated some of this ESSER 1 money. That was when we partnered with the city, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct, to light up
Yeah,
right.
okay.
the
Yep.
public library and the different places that our families could go, our students could go to gain internet access. Yes.
Absolutely. And so they traveled around the city. We identified areas, the library, YM, OIC, pathways, a lot of the places that our children can go to during the day. Absolutely. And that was a collaboration with MIS and the city's MIS. So that brings us to ESSER 2. This time it's very focused from the federal government. There are 4 focus areas that are required in the grant. And yes, it was 22.9 million focused in 4 areas. Number 1, right, academic supports, learning loss, learning acceleration, and recovery. Focus number 2, family and community connections. Priority number 3, focus area, school safety and social emotional well-being of the whole student and all of our school staff. And priority 4, remote learning, staff development, and the digital divide. You will see throughout the evening and through the entire presentation that this time in ESSER 2, we're focusing on all 4. ESSER 1, there was 12, we focused on 5. This plan is so comprehensive that we cover each of those, and throughout the presentation that you'll see later tonight, you'll see how it connects to all 4 of those priority areas. If you want some more detailed information, there is a link in the title that brings you right to the state website that elaborates a little bit in more detail on those 4. This plan is definitely a community support plan. We've worked with a lot of our partners, our after-school partners, and our needs assessment. And we've dealt with feedback from our partners, after-school partners, providers, and all the other community partners that Superintendent mentioned. But at this point, that's the history of where we are today and the requirements of the grant. I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues, and they're going to begin. I'll introduce Jen.
Thank you. Before we get started and you hear about all of the programs that we are intending to roll out through the recovery process, I do want to remind you that they're in the planning phase, and we've intentionally left these programs sort of open so that we can make accommodations at the school level, the program level, the grade level for different students in our district, whether they're of a specific age, whether they are an EL student, a special education student, a boy, a girl, somebody who's interested in athletics. So we've really tried to, wrap this plan in the needs of our students. So while you may not hear specifics for every student in every program, please know that the intention of creating these programs was to be flexible enough to accommodate all the learners we have in the district. So the targets that we have for you today, so by the end of this presentation, here's what you can expect to know from us. And you'll be able to do that by looking at the success criteria at the end. So if you were to have a child in this district, or you can think of a child with a specific profile, you would be able to identify particular programs within this plan that would meet the needs of that child in the recovery process. And also you'll be able to see how a recovery plan supports the portrait of a graduate. All right. So our recovery vision is quite supportive, as the superintendent said, of the district vision. And we did outline 3 more specific details in our vision. We really are focusing on building up the whole child during this recovery process, making sure that they have emotional, academic, and academic supports that they need throughout the day and after school as well. We want to return them to a place where they feel motivated, where they feel engaged, where they feel powerful, they have choice, and we want them to feel happy coming to school. Most of all, we want to see joy. And they've been in this remote setting or a hybrid setting for well over a year now, so we want to see that come back. And finally, we want to help students realize that they have so many reasons to be proud in and out of school. So pride in themselves as a student and as a member of the New Britain community.
So this slide is about considering what we already have and recognizing that recovery, all of our recovery supports are going to be layered on top of what we already have. So this was just a second. You'll see a slide much later on in the presentation where we have a little bit of reverse. So once you know a little bit more about the recovery efforts, you'll see how those layer really well on top of our current supports. So just remembering, we already have instructional coaches in just about all of our buildings, you know, and so you'll see us fill some of those gaps. We're already bringing in some of those supports at the very early levels with the foundations programs. That's still going to continue. So in no way as we roll out the recovery supports are we replacing anything that's currently in our plan. Okay, we're still going to have literacy tutors. You'll see a little bit more about that. And our curriculum units are going to continue to roll out at all levels. Family liaisons remain in place. We'll still be doing our culturally responsive book studies with administrators and staff. Those have rolled into some schools. They'll roll into more schools next year. And then our health and safety procedures, whatever they are in September, they are this summer, will certainly also be in place. So note that you know, as we go, you'll see the combination of those two.
This slide just represents some of the ways in which we've been collecting information about what the content of our programming will be. It hasn't been a single source of information. We've gathered information from all of these places that are listed here for you, including within our own district. We sent out the first of several surveys. This is not just a one-time deal. We're also planning on really speaking to students and getting their feedback, not through a survey, but through talking with them and getting some more personal information about what students would like to come back to school and have waiting here for them. In addition to that, we've talked to several local agencies, as well as our out-of-school time providers who were asking what they would like to do, how would you like to work with us and partner with us in order to bring additional programming in the recovery process, as well as adhering to some national guidelines. We've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of great feedback, especially from the National Summer Learning Recovery Guidelines.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the social and emotional supports that we're going to be providing to our students. And so when we think about providing social and emotional supports, the first thing we need to do is start with assessing students, assessing their social and emotional strengths, as well as areas that may require instruction. And so the district has been using the BEST, which is a behavior and emotional screener, but that screener, it assesses risk. It measures risk, students' risk of demonstrating inappropriate behaviors, or having social and emotional concerns. You may be aware that the Connecticut State Department of Education has an agreement with Aperture Ed to provide the DESA, which is another screener to all districts in the state who would like to, free of charge for the next 2 years. And so the district, we kind of weighed the pros and cons of both of the screeners, and we've decided that we want to go with the DESA, which is the Devereaux, the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment. And the reason we're going with the DESA is because it is strengths-based. It is also based on 8 of the CASEL competencies, and it's more of a proactive measure, if you will. So we're going to go with the DESA moving forward. Now, in terms of the tiered supports and how we can use that data to continue to provide supports to our students, the first thing that we're looking at in terms of the recovery funds is to strengthen our universal supports for students by contracting BCBA services. These services can provide system support through data collection and analysis. BCBAs can also provide professional development to our teachers and our staff on social and emotional learning, as well as their data collection methods as well. Now, the other two supports, the targeted and the intensive supports, tier 2 and tier 3 supports, we're not necessarily spending any recovery dollars on those supports, but we did want to make you aware of sort of how that system, what that system will entail. And so at the targeted level, we will continue to use our social workers to provide small group direct services in the areas of social skills, as well as counseling as needed. And then at our intensive level, our tier 3 supports, there are going to be two different types of supports, if you will, at that level. The first deals with our school psychologists, and so now that we have PPT specialists, pre-K-12, we will now have school psychologists that are available to provide direct services to students. We already have that structure in place at the elementary level, and next year, moving forward, we'll have that also at the secondary level. And so school psychologists will be able to meet one-on-one with students to provide those direct services. The other type of tier 3 support that we'll be able to provide is, or we will continue to provide, I should say, is through the school-based health clinicians who can provide one-on-one services, will continue to provide one-on-one services with students and their families, okay? In addition, in terms of our supports, we will continue to partner with the Klingberg licensed social workers who currently push in services at the elementary level, so they support our teachers at the core. We also will use our readiness units, and as you know, our readiness units are chock full of materials and instructional strategies that support lifting student voice, for example. It also is full of examples of how to create rituals and routines, which we all know the research says is very important for students to create predictability and consistency, which facilitates safe learning environments for our students. So we'll continue to utilize our readiness units to also support our students. And then we also have our social and emotional curriculum, which was established in 2015, and is also based on our CASEL competencies.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me. Just to kind of piggyback what Donna Swaby said, and looking at the mental health and wellness of our students, we also want to make sure we're able to support our staff as well. And with that, we have a great partnership with CMHA, one of our community partners here in town, and Chris Marino, the clinical director. We've been able to establish and put together an outstanding professional development series that will take place in August. But even more exciting than that is he's going to be able to provide, along with his staff, a weekly debriefing session for our staff, run by his clinicians and himself, that will address across disciplines any look-fors, trends that we're seeing in our classrooms. Again, operating similar to the DESA screener from a strengths perspective, working with our staff to establish safe space in our classrooms, routines, expectations. So it's a really nice ordeal, and it's definitely not going to be a one and done. It's going to be something that is going to be a partnership that we're going to have throughout the remainder of this year and throughout next school year.
Thanks. We're all gonna have whiplash by the time we're done tonight.
Over here now.
Ready, switch, Matt? Thank you. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about our in-school academic supports for students. So you'll see P1, P3, P4, those are our priority areas that this particular slide and its descriptors are addressing. So we began this plan sort of considering teaching assistants and looking at some of our very vulnerable population coming into school next year, which would be our kindergartners, right? Brand new to school after a pandemic, they've been home. So we thought, let's put some extra assistance in those classrooms. And so we began there, and then we had, again, some of those conversations with some of those people that you saw in the beginning, and thought to look again, considering transition and overall transition, where else do we have some of those sort of vulnerable populations? And so as we looked at that, we considered grade 6 and we considered grade 9. So those 5th graders going into middle school, and then those 8th graders coming into the high school. And so what we thought to do here is add teacher assistants, and you'll see sort of the organization of how those teacher assistants will be planned and professionally developed, but adding them in sort of a 2-to-1 ratio, so 1 teaching assistant per 2 classrooms at our K level, at our grade 6 level, and at our grade 9 level. So as to sort of decrease the ratio within the classroom of kids to adult. In addition, our instructional coach model, you know the instructional coaches we have across the district. And it's been super successful between the one-to-one tutoring with teachers, the professional development, the rollout of curriculum and facilitating planning with the teachers. So we'd like to roll that into the levels where it doesn't currently exist and into some content that we're bringing in for next year with new curriculum. So that's where you're going to see a pre-K coach who's going to help develop our pre-K 4s and get them really prepared for kindergarten. And you'll see 10 elementary math coaches. That's 1 math coach for each of the elementary schools, again, to assist with that K-5 curriculum for next year. And 5 secondary coaches, 4 at New Britain High School, and 1 at RELP that's going to be at a secondary level supporting both PALS and SCA. Now the 4 at the high school are going to particularly target some of those classrooms where we have that very high EL population. We're going to be looking at those SIOP strategies and really coaching those teachers up. Those places where we have some higher failure rates, we want to, again, decrease that ratio and get some extra hands in there and some extra training in there. So this is going to be our in-school, the main in-school academic supports.
Can I just add one thing to that? I want you to recognize, I guess, even in the year of the pandemic, we had a lot of discussions prior to the start of this school year. Do we arrest the work we've been doing around curriculum? Do we stop because it's a pandemic year? Do we, what do we do? And we said, no, we have to, and it's put a lot of pressure on our teachers, I have to say, who have risen to the occasion, because we said, yes, we're in a pandemic, and yes, you need to learn how to engage students via technology or in front of you, but it's still a learning year for all of us. And so we persevered and pushed through, because having this new curriculum and letting it sit on a shelf for a year was not okay, especially when we look at I don't want to get too deep into it, but we just knew we can't stop. You can't stop trying to improve core instruction. What good is recovery if we're not doing well at the core? And so where you see throughout this presentation, and you'll see later in some of the org charts, recovery starts at the core. And then it goes to tier 2 and then to tier 3. We cannot overlook the core. So the 10 elementary math coaches, because we have data to support the strength of these instructional coaches in our building this past year around the ELA rollout, we have to keep instruction going. And what we do know is we have a very high failure rate at our high school in mathematics. And we cannot simply blame high school math teachers for the failure. It starts in kindergarten. We know we have work to do with our teachers on instructing kids in a constructivist building way rather than how many of us were taught. As far as here's an algorithm, just figure it out. It doesn't matter if you don't understand. So it's critically important that we start, because the curriculum is going to roll out next year. We have to seize that opportunity to train up our classroom teachers in strengthening their math practices in the classroom. Thank you,
Laura.
Laura.
We will be continuing with New Britain University as well. So teachers will still be receiving those strategies through that instruction in NB.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, as we move to look at out-of-school time programming, this is just a preview of what we're going to talk about a little bit later. But you can see there are about 5 new initiatives, new or improved initiatives that you'll be hearing about. But I think it speaks to the programming, different contexts that you'll be able to see the programming for students, so that there is some choice, both for teachers to select programming for students or for students and families to be able to select programming. And I will be talking about these in just a little bit.
Again. All right, well, so the main priority first that we started with is our students, their social emotional well-being and their academic well-being. So, and we spoke a little bit to that. And we also spoke about the academic during the day and as well as opportunities before and after school. We're gonna dive in a little bit deeper further along. I'm kind of like the midway break. But one thing I'm getting to talk about, surprise, is the family engagement piece. We've had a lot of feedback from our families and during a pandemic and our outreach efforts. And in this recovery plan, we've been meeting with the state, we've been meeting with folks at CREC and even folks in DC about what else can we try. We've done a lot of great work from adding the FSLs, the BSA work, going out to our communities. But there's something we haven't tried yet that we'd like to put in the recovery plan, and that's called parent-teacher home visiting. It's a program that, and the link to the website is also attached to the slide, but there's 5 main core practices. The first one is that the visits are voluntary for the families and for the staff. Number 1, no wavering. It has to be a voluntary environment. Educators are trained and compensated. It is after the school day or on the weekend. It's the whole focus is that you're sharing goals and dreams, and it's not focusing on academics and negativity. It's all positive and growth and relationship building. 4 is there's no target. We any volunteer that's willing to have someone come visit, we come visit. The teachers come to your home and or meet you where you're at a library and visit with you and build that relationship. And the last one is it's always in pairs and time to reflect and time to learn. So this is the family engagement piece, one of the priority number 2, as well, in addition to all the work we are currently doing in engaging families, we're gonna add this to the plate this year.
All right, I have the privilege to be able to talk about what we're doing for our staff as it relates to social emotional learning. So we know very well that our staff was impacted by the pandemic, and they're also very concerned about their own well-being as well as being in a good space, social emotionally, to be able to do what they do best, which is work with our children and families. So we've come up with a proposal that will be what's called a badging system. This is something that's been done in the private sector or in corporate America for several years now. And what it does is it allows staff to be very much more, hold on, I can't see without my, I can't see with my glasses on. They're fogging up, right? We've all been there, sorry guys. So the badging is really focused on the mind, the body, and the soul. And that's really the focus for our staff, because if they're not well, if they're not focused on who they are as a human being, they're not going to be in a good space to do what's best for our children and families. So the badging is a way to encourage them, to incentivize them to go out on their own and to do things such as take a mindfulness course, to sign up for a 5K, to walk after work with colleagues. And every time that they do something on a monthly basis, we will gather that information and award badges to our staff. They'll accrue those badges, and every month we'll raffle off to folks to incentivize them to do more, to be well for themselves, to be well for their families so that they can be who they can be, the very best they can be rather for their students. And then quarterly or 4 times a year, we're going to do a district-wide wellness event. And that will be something that we'll develop over time with the colleagues. And that will be something that we can gather as a whole learning community, as friends, as professionals, and just be able to remind ourselves that we are more than just teachers. We are more than just people who are struggling with, the challenges of post-pandemic, and we can come together as a community. So that is our plan for social emotional support, as well as what Mr. Marimont shared in regards to the direct professional learning that our staff will get. Thank you.
Okay. This is where we get to introduce some of the new initiatives. I'm really excited about this. I hope you are too. It's gonna go pretty fast, but you're gonna be able to see some connections that people have already made. First off, I want you to look at these programs. We're looking at our students from this abundance model, from a strengths model. So we want to make sure that we are looking for all of the positives and working with what students can do. Going back to that first statement, we are a district that believes in that power of I can, and we need to make sure that our students understand that they can too. So we're starting all of this recovery effort and really our summer programming in April. At the bottom right of the screen, you can see an icon that says Level Up. So you'll see Level Up throughout several of these programs. And what Level Up is, it's a type of program. any program that's an enrichment type program, which means we don't have teachers leading the students, we have community providers leading the students. So they are learning in a non-traditional setting, but they are working towards obtaining life skills and getting experiences that are gonna allow them to sort of, level up, like in the game-based world, to the next level. So in April, we are piloting this level up format with 4 sites: Smalley, Lincoln, Pulaski, and Slade. We have a combination of sort of some mind events with some body events, so there's some thinking activities, and then there's also some physical fitness activities for each of the sites. We're gonna keep the numbers small. We are looking at keeping it around 60 students per site. There's a morning session and an afternoon session. But for those parents who have who need full daycare, we'll be providing that as well with a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. Transportation and lunch is also included, breakfast. And then our staff will include some folks from the district, our behavior support assistants, our family school liaisons, a school nurse, and then a native language support assistant or a para, a bilingual. So we have that support for students who need it. And then we have our CBO partners who are going to work with us. We're hoping that this is a really successful model. We're gonna get feedback about the model and hopefully scale up in the future. The next initiative I'm going to talk about is another initiative we're going to start small and hopefully scale up, and it's called Teachers in the Park. So usually we bring our students into school. Well, at this point, we're going to try pushing into the community. This is a sort of a novel approach where teachers actually push into the parks and learning happens in the community. So there are a couple of programs that we're going to be piloting this summer. Go to the next slide. I'll start with our Summer in the Parks. Summer in the Parks is going to be a partnership with the Park and Rec program. We're going to work with the students that go to the summer camps through Park and Rec. And twice a week, they will have a game-based, it's play-based, a game-based math experience twice a week with a certified teacher that will go and meet them out in the park. They're going to bring the games to the students. So students will get about 5 or 6 weeks of this enrichment math. And they don't have to go anywhere. It's being brought right to them. And this model's been very successful. This is a program that started in Pennsylvania and has been won some awards with the National Summer Learning Association. We're also going to pilot it with our pre-Ks. So that's a plan that's just beginning to take some formation, but we're going to look at working at Gaffney and at Relk sort of on their playgrounds, being outside, and that will be sort of a family and me activity, but trying to build engagement for school and again pushing out and not having it be in the building, but rather outside a together activity. And as I mentioned before, these programs are inclusion friendly. So we worked with Daniel Singleton to come up with some strategies to include all of our students so that every student has the opportunity to participate and has their needs met when they come to the program. We're also looking at doing some pop-up events in the spring, some larger ones for perhaps kindergarten registration, getting our teachers to go to the park and helping to register families, doing a fun activity with students while families are able to register for kindergarten. Something like even a district-wide scavenger hunt that's kind of done outside and in the parks. And there we have this activity has a lot of potential. We also need to get feedback from the community and see if this is a program that we could continue, at a school at a school level, or we can scale up to other parks in the district. All right, you probably all heard me speak about the summer learning experiences we have here in New Britain. We have See, Create, and Extreme. This is our kindergarten to 8th grade continuum of learning we've had for summer, but this year we've kind of amped it up. We are able to open more slots for students. We do this in the SEED program by offering academics in the morning as well as in the afternoon and sort of flip-flopping that with the enrichment process. So we've upped the number of students we're able to serve. Almost 150 more elementary students will be able to be served in our SEED program. And we've upped the numbers for our Create and Extreme program, which we're already full day for both, but we'll be serving more students there as well. In addition, you can see another level up opportunity. So the week before the summer programming starts and the week after, we'll be taking a smaller cohort of students. Again, students who perhaps need help transitioning back into school or need some extra time and a smaller group size. They'll work with our community partners to either ramp up to summer learning or to slide into the school year. And our last summer program, which doesn't have a logo yet, it's still in its very initial stages, is our Jumpstart into Kindergarten program for our pre-K 4s. Specifically looking at our pre-Ks who either have never attended who've never attended school before, who may have only attended virtually or were chronically absent during this current school year. So we'll be opening 4 classrooms at De Loretto. The academic portion will be a half day, either AM or PM, and the YMCA will pick up the other half of the day, doing a camp for students. So students will be there from 8 to 4, which is a long day for students. We understand that, but they are going to be coming to school for full days beginning in August. So we will provide lots of support for students that are coming to these programs. We will have our certified teachers plus a para, any support staff that's necessary. Students will get the opportunity to learn how to be in school. Lots of social emotional support. And let's see. 120 students in total, sorry. Transportation and our meals are included again in that program. And I did want to mention, I know Donna had talked about the SEL curriculum. For all of our summer programs, we are going to look to that SEL curriculum as the foundation for our summer curriculum this year. So I just wanted to circle back to that. I'd forgotten to mention it.
And talking about the transitions, I mean, some of the important things in kindergarten. those
Right,
routines.
absolutely. Working on the skills that students need to be successful in school. A lot of that executive functioning, so that when they come in, they've already been in school. They know a lot of the routines and the expectations. All right, so we have yet another level up opportunity. You can see there's a little bit of a pattern here with our enrichment. Trying to brand these names of these programs so that people in the district understand that this is an enrichment program. This is something where my student is not going to be in class learning, but they'll be outdoors perhaps or engaged in some sort of hands-on learning activity. So level up will happen at all levels, pre-K to 12. This will happen on Saturdays. We're looking at cycles of about 6 weeks at a time, with the first 5 weeks being for students only, and that 6th week being a parent engagement activity, or something that students and families can participate in together. And that it's going to look different. I can't give you very specific details about this because we have a variety of programs that are in the works. We've reached out to community partners. We've had about 11 community partners. A lot of those partners that work with us in summer, and they've agreed to create these Super Saturday programs for us. And one of the programs we know we are going to be doing, pre-K to 12, is our unified sports. So we're really excited to bring that into all of our buildings with lots of opportunities for students and peer models to work together in this setting. So we're very, very excited about that. I can't wait to see what other kinds of programming will be coming down the pipe for the students, and it will look different at every school because every school will be able to host different activities, and the activities will rotate. So there'll be 5 cycles throughout the year.
So my question is,
Sure.
is that open for all students or is that going to be by invitation?
So the Super Saturday programs are designed to target different populations of students every cycle. So you wouldn't necessarily be going to Super Saturday every cycle. You might go based on interest. You might go based on the recommendation of a teacher, but there'll be something for everyone. So there might be, if you have a student that's quite interested in, geocaching or letterboxing. I don't know if you've done this where you look for items and coordinates and you're in the woods and sort of using a GPS to find things. If you have a student that's interested in that, it might be that. We also, if you're in pre-K, we're going to looking at some Smart Start curriculum for sports. There's a lot of different activities that are going to be happening. So we can't even. I know it sounds silly, but we can't even imagine all of the programs that are going to be formed. We even have teachers who have kind of caught wind of some of this and have said, "Hey, would it be okay if I And yeah, that sounds great. And so this is these are nice because it doesn't lock in a student for every single session. So it's like committing to 6 weeks, or it's a provider committing to 6 weeks, or a family committing to 6 weeks. But we thought it was really important, going back to what Sandra talked about with family engagement, that we really look to engage our families in the recovery process as well, because we are healing as an entire community. Okay. The board will get a presentation about the Esports Lounge, a much more expansive and thorough presentation. I just wanted to mention that there is an Esports Lounge that is in the works, that is going to be put at New Britain High School. And the purpose of this is to engage students a different population of students that maybe we haven't engaged in the past. There's actually a sports team for esports. I don't know if you were aware of this, just become aware of this over the past couple of months. And they compete in the CIAC, in the Eastern Sports Conference, and they train like a sports team. They are a sports team. You can letter in this. You can you compete and you get national recognition. We have students in the district that are actually gaming frequently now and would have shown interest in joining a team. So we're taking a room in the technology wing of the high school and creating an esports center. Not only will it be used for competitive esports, but it will also have a casual gaming lounge area for students to use, after school, for clubs. People can sign up for it. And eventually it will be used to hold classes, to enrich existing curriculum. With the whole curriculum renewal process, there's a possibility of holding actual courses in the Esports Lounge. And if you're aware, there's a huge call for marketing and for shoutcasting, which is like sportscasting for esports. So we're tapping into a whole sector of social networking that our students are really interested in. So we're trying to capitalize on student interest.
We might have some board members who are interested in running those classes. I know. Not me. I'm like hanging on by my nails trying to figure that out.
So the next slide just shows a little bit more depth about the different areas that esports touches. It's quite a new experience. We actually have been to CCSU. They do have an esports competitive team at CCSU. It's quite interesting, and they've been able to capitalize on its popularity, and they actually hold classes in there. They're full-fledged college classes with lots of credit, and they're and it's something that is going to really set New Britain apart.
So, and I'm just going to add too, everything you see here, like tips, teachers in the park, and we called it tips and ticks, teachers in the community, but that wasn't as cool. But this is the root of something bigger, right?
Didn't make the fun.
But this is going to be bigger as time goes on, and we talk further about having courses for credit for kids in this area, right? This is, and you polled some kids, and you've got quite a response back from kids.
Yeah.
That they would be very interested in. What did they say? They wanted to.
They want to bring their own equipment.
Well, they're going to choose their teams.
They want to, of course, setting up the environment so it's safe and appropriate, but also that it allows students to be able to bring in their own equipment, and they're excited and they're motivated, and it might even be something that will interest more students to it maybe even become a gateway for students to be motivated to get into more of those engineering classes, to get into more of those computer science classes if they have this sort of in front of them. So there's a lot of potential with this, and we're really excited to see how it goes. And this is slated to open probably early fall.
And the esports team is going to come at the April board meeting to give you a more in-depth.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are sitting, for me, I'll speak for myself. I'm going, okay, this sounds great. The kids are liking it, I like it too, but I have no idea. So anyway, you'll get us. What's that?
I'll send you some links.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the academics now. So we don't, don't want you to think that we've forgotten about this. When we look at best practices for tutoring, we know that what sets tutoring apart from really great tutoring are relationships. So this has been set up with that in mind. So we're looking at student group size of no more than 5 students per teacher, and I should say instructor, because when I say elevate instructor, could be a certified teacher, could be a para with specialized training. It could be pre-service teachers or student teachers. And it could be a speech and language pathologist, could be a native language support assistant. We're talking, could be a teacher, special ed teacher, ESL teacher. It could be, there's a whole host of people that could be effective tutors for our students. You can see the breakdown across age groups. It goes from pre-K all the way up through 9-12. It does include our specialized programs, but you can see the content and the hours and the schedule that we are proposing. Of course, again, this will look a little bit different in each school, but here are some of the guidelines that we're going to ask people to look at. We're looking at literacy, numeracy, and SEL. So across the board, SEL will be included in all of this tutoring, whether it's 5 minutes of mindfulness at the beginning, or learning how to reflect about your work, goal setting, looking at some of those executive functioning skills and those life and learning competencies. In your upper grades in 9-12, you have things like credit recovery that are going to become really important for your high school students that can get that extra support after school. And then for some of our specialized programs, we have art and music therapy. So it could look different in every single school. We're looking at an AM session for our middle schools and elementary schools. So an hour before school, you come in, do some mindfulness, small group tutoring. In the afternoon, we're going to be asking students to stay for 2 hours. It's not 2 hours of tutoring, it's an hour of tutoring, and then it's an hour of something else. What is that something else? It's going to look different in every school. Some schools have formed clubs. So the hour that students aren't engaged in tutoring, they'll be going to clubs, whether it's sewing or puzzles or logic or I think they're doing some running clubs, things like that. It could be extra time to have a study hall for homework. It could be getting on and looking at your iReady MyPath or Prodigy. It could be some quiet reading time. So there's a lot that will be worked out. We will have lead teachers, which they'll talk about in just a few minutes, that will help to coordinate those efforts for students. And this program, this tutoring program, is set apart from the Level Up programs. It's called Elevate. And so what we're going to be doing is we're bringing students and we're raising the bar. You can see the sort of the momentum that we're trying to gather with the names of our programs. We're leveling up, we're elevating, we're building students up. Okay. And the last thing I'll talk about, and this is definitely in the brainstorm phase, so we're kind of excited about this, but it was an idea that was proposed for students to be able to, at the high school, to have sort of a rewards card, kind of like your Dunkin' or your Starbucks card, where when you attend school events, you can earn points, and those points would be turned in for exchanged for things like incentives, like sports tickets, Canes Corner gear, prom tickets, your yearbook. So just some things that students would like to earn. Again, this is a very exploratory phase. We want to see how students would feel about a reward system like this. Would it bring them into school? Would it encourage them to come back? We know our high school students have been tough, and they need those incentives to come back to school, and we're hoping that this program might be one of the ways that we get them back to school. All right. This is your recap slide. I know I've been talking for a while. So here's your moment of zen where you can quietly review what's been talked about. I know there's a lot of acronyms and names thrown out there, and this, luckily, they're captured in the presentation for you. Just to quickly repeat, we have our Level Up Enrichment, we have Elevate Tutoring, and we have our New Britain Summer Learning Experiences, which now include the pre-K component.
I'm looking for how many we have left, if people want to take a 3-minute stretch. I'm seeing people start to fade. Keep going. Nick is saying keep going. All right, I tried. You can pace the back. I do that sometimes. Right.
So me again. The next section is how we're going to, you've heard a lot about the plan, like the what. So now I want you to, you're going to be able to see the how, and this is putting our plan into practice. Here is our proposal for moving forward with our recovery plan.
I'm hoping this is big enough for people to see.
I know.
Ah!
So I'm going to start start by presenting kind of the pictorial view or the organizational structure for our recovery plan. So there were really 4 tenets to how we planned our organizational structure. So first, to give you a sense of how the chart is laid out, the maroon are our existing positions, and the gray are what we're considering our new positions, okay? So when I say the 4 tenets, the first tenet is our administrative team, the administrative row, if you will. There's no administrative positions to our recovery plan. We're using our existing leadership team for recovery. The second thing is we wanted to provide leadership opportunities for our teachers, leading from the middle. Teacher leadership opportunities are becoming more and more sought after by teachers and for their experiences and their untapped resources, in some cases, in our opinions. Then what we wanted to do was make sure we provide extra earning opportunities for a variety of our employees, as Jen said so well, as she gave us an overview of the programming. And then lastly is replicating what we feel is already working, so expanding on positions such as our instructional coaches. So let's take a look at on the left-hand side, the curriculum information teachers, of which we have a proposal of 4. And that is a team that will work directly with our academics department, with our curriculum coordinators, and they are really the rubber that hits the road in regards to actualizing the teaching and learning component to our recovery plan. But as you see, they're delineated in what they're going to do, right? We have our curriculum information teacher that will be focused on professional learning, as well as TAs, and then our other curriculum information teachers will focus on the summer learning, our 6-12 academies. So they'll have different wheelhouses or focus areas that they'll be responsible for, and they'll report to our district curriculum coordinators, as well as the heart of this, right, is our assistant coordinator of summer and STEAM, which is Jen. Our assistant coordinator of summer and STEAM will have 2 teacher leaders that will report directly to her, who will really, again, to use that expression, kind of the actualize our recovery plan. So there'll be 2 of them, pre-K 5 and 6-12, and they will be responsible for having oversight for the 25 leads, which will be people who will lead the work, both before and after, and all of the other wraparound opportunities that Jen and the team gave us an overview prior to me going over this slide. Then we also have our instructional coaches, which Laura went over in regards to their focus areas. There'll be 16 new instructional coaches. But again, as Laura mentioned, there'll be different focus areas and different grade bands. Specifically, something we're really proud of is the instructional coaches concept at the high school, focusing on our Ls. Next, we have our transition teaching assistants, for which there'll be 55. Those are not just, added onto our FTEs. They're really primed for, and that's why they're called transition assistants, for those core grades of kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th. Those transition grades are essential, and those TAs are going to be key assistants to help with our recovery work. Then we have our paraeducators, of which you see on the bottom right, which there'll be 24. And those paraeducators will be focused on our key programming in a variety of grades, vertically, pre-K through 12. Our literacy tutors, which we've had and had success with for quite some time, we'll continue to have them to be part of our recovery efforts. And then, as described previously, our Elevate and Program instructors, which will be certified educators, paraeducators, a variety of different employees in the district that will help us with our goal for recovery. Any questions about the art chart?
I was gonna say, we'll go
I
through
know.
if they,
Yeah.
oh, wait, just write it down. We can go back to it
That was
too.
muscle memory.
Yeah, I know. That was that teacher in you.
It was. All right, next slide. Okay, so another way to look at it is here with kind of a Venn diagram concept, is looking at the positions this way. So at this point, we have 3 central office support staff. So why do we have that? Well, when you look at the numbers that I just presented on the previous slide, we will be hiring and recruiting and processing basically over a year's worth of employees in a very short amount of time. We really need the human capital to actualize this plan. So we are very purposeful about, well, who are they, right? So we have a payroll assistant, staffing assistants, of which there will be 2 to help process hires entirely. One out of the two will also support that wellness initiative that I went over with you previously in our presentation as far as the badging and the quarterly events, et cetera. And then the crossover, people who support, from the central office perspective, but also are working with our schools and our adult staff, which are recovery facilitators and our CITs. And then over 200 positions as they relate to student and face time, which you've seen an overview of this evening. So when you look at that, it was our goal to be extremely purposeful for direct impact to students and families.
And I'm just gonna add too, the elephant in the room. I need you to see that out of, the $23.9 million that we're going to be expending on this recovery, we went really lean with just the clerical staffing assistants and payroll assistants. Those 6 crossover really are going toward the building, but over 200 in the building. But there's got to be a way to get these people onboarded, to have a plan that is structurally sound. Our staff is already running at 100 miles an hour. So, but I just wanted you to see it pictorially so you could appreciate the amount of, or the volume of new positions at the building level. Thanks.
So, I thought we thought we would add the dollars associated with, with what we've just shown you, right? So just on this slide is only the positions that Mary Ellen just spoke of, right? The superintendent mentioned that it's 22.9 million over the course of the next 3 years. So I wanted to give you a year at a glance guesstimate, as we know, like in the plan, it's still draft, but what the proposed amount will be. So in the first column all the way to the left, it's a little cut off on the screen, but that's the title that you just previously saw. The second column is the type of position. Is it salary? Is it stipend? Is it extra earning? Which makes a difference with the benefits. The next column is the number of positions that were proposed. If you notice a little bit towards the very bottom, those are the amount of students we hope to have contact in the year, which is 50% of our population to attend one of those events. It's best to do that elevate component with looking from the lens of how many students can have that opportunity. And then to the right is the estimated cost for the year. And all the way to the right in the very subtotal column, I wanted to do the comparison of the top 4 rows are those that are indirect impact on students, and the bottom rows are the direct impact on students' face-to-face environment. So you can see the comparison in the dollars.
This slide is just the opposite of the slide you saw in the beginning, where we had the current supports listed at the bottom. And now that you know the recovery supports, you can see, this is just a little bit of a recap in our equation. So it's not that we're forgetting about the things that we currently had. We're only focusing on recovery. It's a combination of the two. So the sum of our efforts in both our current supports, which we'll be maintaining, and our recovery supports equals.
Can we do a drum roll? Yeah. We're a little punch out.
So
we'd like you to notice we don't know, we're just gonna say the bee is sweating. And has grown some muscles, because when it first started, it was a weak-looking bee.
So we hope you see this recovery plan, as we do, as an opportunity for both of our students and our staff and our families to kind of slingshot past even where we were and just, be better than we were before. We've made a lot of progress this year in terms of technology that we'd like to continue to capitalize on moving forward. Sorry.
This is a very sort of drafty timeline for how we're going to begin bringing in some of these folks, right? So just beginning to post, looking at our internal and external postings for some of those positions. Certainly there's a lot of interviewing that needs to happen, and then a lot of onboarding. We actually have to hire the staffing assistants who are going to help with the onboarding of some of these folks. So that's really what our spring and summer are going to be, once we get some of those folks on board, creating those training modules so that we're ready for September, and then rolling that training out over the course of the summer and during those early days back to ensure that our folks are ready to hit the ground and support our students in the classrooms and support our staff.
And then to parallel that, we have our out of school timeline beginning so soon in April. So
2 weeks.
Not terrified.
3 weeks.
So no, we're really, really excited and super hopeful that this is gonna be a model that works because you can see again, we've got another level up program listed for December. So we're really hopeful that this, it may need a little tweaking, obviously. Reflection is good for everyone, but we're gonna try it out now and then perfect it throughout the course of the summer. But we have a lot of really great things on board for students and staff and families. So just a little reminder that, it's been a tough year. It's been a tough year, but a lot of, we're trying to see a lot of positives and a lot of good that we can take from this. There's always some silver linings that we can take away from this. It's been a learning experience. Our students and our families, we've all lived through history. And we may feel like we've gone back a few steps, but you just have to get up one more time and you're knocked down. So that's what a comeback is, and that's what we're ready for it.
So we'll open it to questions, unless there are none. I was supposed to be collecting, but I didn't want to.
Oh, okay.
Do you want us to collect?
I only have one.
Good, Annie.
I think you answered it already, though.
I have questions.
Oh, you want Do we want to just stand here up front and answer? Oh, wait.
Super Saturdays.
I didn't follow instructions.
Well, the positions be permanent, I think we can do that one right now.
Yeah, that's it.
But caveat is for you to get another 50 million. If that's the case, we'll probably use a portion of it going well. But these positions are only as long as the grant is there.
Okay.
This might, Superintendent, this one goes up there.
Yes, well, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about all of our staff. So they can see it, but I'm gonna hold a town hall. Out here, different about out there, whatever. All right. Okay, it's freezing in here.
Is it lit with that door open?
Meryl, did you open that door? What, has it really? It got cold then.
Donna, we have some up here.
All right,
To what's in the budget or needs to kind of answer that, Donna.
You want me to close the door?
So that is.
No,
You're good.
Okay, that's true, and expectation of budget increase with staffing, union affiliation for 2 years. It's kind of the same thing. Will the positions be absorbed, I believe?
Okay.
all right, are we good to answer the questions? You're good? Well, Gail, cursive is not your
You got a lot
friend.
of teachers up here.
I said cursive is not your friend. All right, so I'm gonna start with the two that I have on budget. I'll start with that. And so they both are similar. So we are slated to get to 22.9 when we finish writing the grant to get it in for next week. We do anticipate, excuse me, sorry? Oh, no, did you want?
Backs to the camera.
Oh, sorry. I'm going over here. We anticipate getting the 22.9, but they just want to make sure that everything we've done is based on the needs of our families, our students, and our staff, right? So this 22.9 is what you saw tonight. We spent the 22.9. That will get us through this summer, next school year, the following summer, the next school year, right? So that is when these positions will go away. That's what happens. It's grant dollars, right? There's no way we can absorb in our current budget 210 additional positions, unless, of course, we get a windfall of 40 million. That would be awesome. So we'll plug for that now. The other thing we have to consider is there is more money coming our way. It's anticipated that it's about $50 million. Haven't seen it, don't know it, so we don't count on it. But first blush, we're talking about if we find success and we see the kids really gaining, that we can use that $50 million to extend the recovery. In addition to making some upgrades to, we're talking briefly.
Try to get people in at that capacity, and this just allows.
Now, I set up a laptop. Oh, sorry.
It's sometimes been at the board chair's discretion in the past. It's also sometimes just been asking among the people who are there. Like if because there have been a few times when we've had grievance hearings, 4 people, 4 or 5 people are there, and someone who hasn't served in the chair before says, I'd really like to get the experience. And just through sort of the group deciding that one person serves, it allows flexibility.
And that would have to move forward to grievance hearing.
Yeah.
Mr. Mercier,
Yes.
you wanna?
Sure. I know there was a question, Mr. Mercier, about on the bullet point for DCF reports.
Can we wait just
Sure.
one quick second on that, just for we have a pending edit. Any other questions on that edit? Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Spalding.
Sure. So this language as it is currently, I'm recommending that we remove that. There's no way really to, depending on the circumstances, really ensure confidentiality in that situation. And I actually ran that by Shipman, our attorney, and they recommended removing it.
Okay, based on that, I'd entertain a motion to strike the language on DCF reports can be presented as public documents as long as students' names are redacted.
So moved.
Do I have a second on the motion? Any discussion of that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Any other questions or discussion on the policy as a whole? Other changes are mostly just clarifications based on feedback we've gotten from Shipman at some of our grievance hearings. For example, we don't actually move to go into a closed section, you just do it. Because it falls under that sort of non-meeting heading. And then also making sure that the vote to approve or deny the grievance is a public vote. It's not something that you can do in a non-meeting situation or in a closed door, behind closed door situation. If there are no other suggestions, questions, or revisions, I would entertain a motion to move this to the full board for approval.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ms. Reyes to move this policy to the full board on our next agenda for approval. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is policy 5119. And Ms. Salerni handed out a copy of a current policy that we have on our books. And if you notice what has been done in sort of red line is taking the language from this policy 5119, which doesn't really exist in CABE's manual, or I haven't seen it in other districts, and putting it into this piece, which has to do with the same sort of need for emergency communication and just communication in general. And then the only other thing that, in looking at that stood out is the very last paragraph about notifications using the auto notification system pertaining to non-school or community events which lacked any educational purpose. I'm just adding the words developmental because I know there have been times when we've used it to promote things that are maybe being done by Parks and Rec or other community partners, and having to split hairs over what's educational or not seemed like a odd thing. And if we're talking about the whole child, I think development makes sense. Are there any questions on the proposed changes or the red line changes?
So policy 5119 is just for reference where we got the language, but it's staying in place.
I'd actually probably, my suggestion would be possibly removing 5119 off of the books, inserting that language into 110.4, and then just keeping that. It eliminates the redundancy and tightens up anything we can do to sort of tighten up our policies and keep things in similar compartments makes sense. We have a lot of these, and it hadn't been touched since 1993, so. Back then, robocalls weren't really on the radar. So, any other questions, discussion? I would entertain a motion to send the revised policy 1110.4 to the board as along with the recommendation to strike policy 119. Motion? Was that a second, Ms. Reyes?
Yeah.
Okay, so motion by Mr. Lister, seconded by Ms. Reyes. Any further discussion of the motion? Just for clarity, we're sending this policy as amended and also the recommendation to remove the other outdated policy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, next item on the agenda is policy 6162.3. I think this could possibly be a longer discussion. And I also just not just because of you, Dr. Sims. I also just recently got some information from CABE around this policy and what they have, which is much lengthier. And in the interest of time and the fact that we have another meeting starting soon, I would recommend possibly postponing this to our next policy committee agenda, give people a chance to look it over, and I will also send out to the committee members the email I received from CABE around this, if that suits the committee. Okay, do I have a motion to postpone this policy to our next committee meeting?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The final piece for information sharing is just something, I'm not sure how many of the board members currently receive these to their email, but CAPE does put out policy highlights, and I'm going to try to remember to ask Ms. Celerity to include it in our meetings going forward. It's really useful. It sometimes has things that are upcoming in the legislation, things like that, but that's just for your chance to review at your leisure. That is all we have for business. Is there anything else anyone has to bring before the committee? Okay. As always, please, if there's any policies you've come across, recommendations, things that you'd like us to address or revise, please let me know. We'll put it on an agenda. Otherwise, we'll just keep slogging through some of these older policies and also addressing issues as they come up. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:17.
That was like a record.
14 minutes.
I will be right back. As he's trying to sit down.
Frontier for my life.
Would it be okay for us to take like maybe a 5, like start up again at 6:25?